You should probably go and hug your mother. Not because she's just your mom, but being a mother is tough.
Motherhood is something nobody will understand unless you become one, and half the population will never understand because we lack the right reproductive organs to even do so. And I'm not saying fatherhood is less important or less challenging. I'm just saying there's a reason why Mother's Day is a lot more celebrated than Father's Day. And after reading The Sword of Kaigen, I realized how a strong mother narrative can really make a great story. Every time I hear somebody explaining this book or trying to convince somebody to read this book, I always hear them talk about samurai and their innate ability to control water, like they're water bending a sword. And don't get me wrong, that's a good hook, line, and sinker. I mean, it's the reason why I started reading this book in the first place. But once you actually read this book, it's less about fantastical powers and it's more about tradition, family, heavily about motherhood, and breaking systemic sexism. I myself will never know what it's like to be a woman, because if you haven't guessed yet, I'm a man. But just because I'm a man doesn't mean I can't be inspired and influenced by strong women. I mean, heck, I was raised by a strong woman who raised me and my sister, who grew up to be a strong woman herself. I was lucky enough to witness two women in my life who knew their values and stood on business. And unfortunately, a lot of people in life won't have this privilege because, believe it or not, sexism is still very much alive. And in history, women were treated a lot more unfair than not. You know that guy Aristotle, the dude from the 4th century BCE who discovered the earth revolved around the sun? He's had a lot of breakthroughs in physics, philosophy, and astronomy that sent shockwaves through history. Unfortunately, when it comes to human nature and understanding women as equals, he fell a little short. Now you can blame it on the times for his thoughts on women and their basic rights as a human being, but what his thoughts did was more reputable damage to women than repair. He claimed that women were less than men, that a woman's virtue is separate and cannot be equal to man. He quoted himself, "Silence is a woman's glory, but is not equal to the glory of man." Now, Aristotle didn't create sexism himself, but as a respected philosopher, scientist, and astronomer, his words echoed through the rest of history. In The Sword of Kaigen, we can see how a mother who grew up in a country with a tradition that hindered women and glorified men gave her the catalyst to not only prove these traditions wrong, but change the way her whole country views and appreciates women in general. It really makes a profound story on this topic, and it's actually kind of badass. As for myself, badass women who stood up for women to be treated right always fascinated me. Before feminism was a thing and the women's suffrage movement began taking effect in the 19th and 20th century, there were plenty of women who came into power and influenced the world. Take Boudica of ancient Britain of the 1st century AD. After her husband's will stated to leave the Iceni tribe's rule under his daughter's and wife's control, the allied Roman Empire ignored this and then annexed their whole kingdom. They flogged Boudica and also raped her 2 daughters. And after those atrocities, Boudica's rage and will to stop Roman conquest surged inside of her. She called upon her goddess of victory, Andraste, and with an army of 120,000, they took and ransacked 3 different Roman colonies in ancient Britain. And even though the Romans were able to backtrack and regroup to eventually defeat Boudica, her story was told and became a historic legend. During the late 18th century, she became an asexual image of British triumph and heroism. That narrative moved millions of people and of course made a great story. The Sword of Kaigen follows that same narrative, a mother who's extraordinary in certain things and is finally fed up with the traditional shackles of her people. I think this story is beautiful. I think if you have a fascination in fantasy and badass mothers, this is for you.